Hey everyone, all hail the patriarchy. That's right, we're here back again with you to entertain you with ridiculousness of the SJW movement. Um, so I was just chilling and I saw this fucking retarded article from MSNBC yeah, basically the left the news channel, like pretty much as left as it gets. These guys are like the equivalent of Fox News, I would say, in their field. Very much leaning on the left. Which whatever, news is politically biased today. But they wrote this ridiculous article, which was once again another clickbait bullshit article where you actually read it and they really don't go in depth about what they try to get you to click about, but they use that to get people to click on it because they know that's going to get traffic and debate going. It's the tactic that all the papers are using right now with social justice stuff. They're like, if we can make this about race or sexism, we can get tons of hits on this because we don't have actually anything to write about. This is about Larry Wilmore show getting canceled recently on Comedy Central. Now, let me just get that away. I used to be a pretty left leaning guy. I used to be very liberal, you could say, or democratic. And one of my big reasons for that was that I loved The Daily Show. I was a huge fan of The Daily Show, and I was a pretty big fan of Stephen Colbert for a while. Although Ben Shapiro's argument about how what Stephen Colbert does is political blackface, it's really good argument how he doesn't actually do satire because his whole joke is just to make fun of Republicans. He doesn't actually do anything satirical. It's just a hateful attack. But look up Ben Shapiro talking about that. He makes a good point. But I still like Stephen Colbert. I still think he's a funny guy. I just don't respect his character as much as I used to. Um, Jon Stewart though was great. Jon Stewart was always very honest and very real with the people. And even though when he was full of shit sometimes or was biased, he was always an intelligent guy. I hate the Trevor Noah Daily Show. I'll just get that out of the way. I think it's awful. It's part of this bullshit. They make just terrible manipulative points that are not funny, are not well thought out. And Larry Wilmore show, I didn't dislike it as much as I hate Trevor Noah's new Daily Show. I think Trevor Noah's like unintentionally condescending. It's like he doesn't realize it, like he's talking down to the audience, and it's just really he comes off very arrogant. Larry Wilmore, I think he's a funny guy. I think this could have been a really good show, maybe if it had been on a different network and had a different format. But what they're saying here is, did race play a role in Larry Wilmore's downfall? NBCNews.com. Okay, so we have this in the wake of the news that comedian Larry Wilmore's late night Comedy Central program, The Nightly Show, what a clever title, would be abruptly canceled this week. There was a lot of hand wringing and finger pointing about what might have gone wrong. Was it really simply the poor ratings that Comedy Central cited? Some suggested the show suffered from diminished lead in. Trevor Noah's edition of The Daily Show has also faltered in its time slot. Yeah, because it sucks. While some have speculated that the show's inability to provide the kind of shareable viral hits that competitors like Jimmy Fallon and James Corden do undermined its potential. Well, yeah, Jimmy Fallon's very popular, getting viral hits. I'm actually not a huge fan of Jimmy Fallon as a host per se, but his actual um, comedy hits, viral videos are actually pretty awesome to get hits. Like when he does stuff with celebrities and all that, it's actually pretty cleverly thought out to be popular on YouTube. He's very good at getting stuff popular on the internet. Was it simply the bad ratings? Probably. The show had bad ratings. They had bad ratings. They probably weren't making a lot of money on commercial deals, and the show probably wasn't bringing in the cash that they were putting into it, and they'd make more money putting something else at that time slot. Uh, basic stuff here. Bad ratings. Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart were very popular on Comedy Central. Even Wilmore himself seems to be at a loss for why his 2 year run in Stephen Colbert's former time slot didn't work out. We have a lot of people that have responded to our show, and I really do like it a lot, but it's in a mainstream show in the vein of Fallon or Kimmel? No, it's not. It's a niche show, he admitted in a recent NPR interview. Okay. There is another elephant in the room, one that has lurked in the shadows of many late night shows helmed by African American hosts: race. Wilmore, who became a breakout star as the senior black correspondent on The Daily Show, is now the latest in a long line of black hosts who failed to have staying power in the white male dominated world of late night comedy. Even Arsenio Hall, who had a brief but influential run of hosts in the late 80s and early 90s, saw an attempt at a comeback 2 years ago, fell flat just after one season. While black comics like Dave Chappelle and KMPL have scored huge hits with more sketch-oriented variety programs, audiences don't seem to be as comfortable with African Americans behind a desk in a more traditional late-night format. Bill Carter, L. Wilmore is a smart, talented, terrific guy. Never thought format was quite right, of course. His network has lost a lot of its mo and mojo. One huge obstacle may be demographics. The audience for these kinds of programs has skewed older in recent years, even though the current crop of hosts is decidedly younger and more fresh-faced. Wilmore has been the oldest of the bunch at 54. Still, according to Elsa Waith, a 4-year veteran African American stand-up comic, The Nightly Show was appointment television for her and plenty of her black peers. If for no other reason because it was one of the few comedy shows of its kind to air currently featuring a predominantly black perspective. To be frank, I think when they say Larry Wilmore's show wasn't playing well with audience, I think that's just coded language to say it wasn't playing well with white audiences, she told NBC News. Maybe for white audiences, that was too many black people at once. Fuck you, you fucking racist. Are you kidding me? That's the most racist statement possible. If I started a show and I said, man, you know what? Not enough black people watch this show. I guess there's too many white people on this show for black people to deal with it. Well, I mean, are you fucking kidding me? Really? Do you think black people didn't watch Friends too? I know they watched Martin. You're wrong, but I watched Martin too. Shanae's my shit, motherfucker. Come on. What the fuck would you even? This connection is such bullshit. There is no racism involved in this at all. Okay? Nobody gave a shit if Larry Wilmore was black or not when he did the show. The show just wasn't that good. And if you thought it was good, that's fine. It didn't connect with people. Just because it didn't connect with people and people didn't watch it and it didn't have great ratings doesn't mean it's some kind of racial thing because it was black people, that it was a black oriented show. You even brought up a huge hit. Arsenio Hall was huge back in the 90s, and his show fell apart because of him. And he's a hack, so nobody wanted to watch his new show because of that. He's a has been. I mean, plenty of I mean, they act like the black comedy world's so limited all the time, and I get what they mean on some level. But then you bring up stuff like Dave Chappelle and Key and Peele and how big they are doing something like sketch comedy, um, and the controversial stuff they do. I mean, Larry Wilmore stuff seems tame by comparison. Maybe he shouldn't have made a very black centric type talk comedy show on a comedy network where maybe there is a predominantly white audience. I don't know, but I mean, his job is to get ratings on that. That's all it is. It didn't get the ratings. Did not enough black people tune in? I mean, you're saying the ratings are bad. There's not enough black. I mean, there's a lot of black people in this country. Why didn't you all watch the show? I mean, is it white people's jobs to watch every black show because we have to keep the ratings up high, even if we don't like the show? Okay, it's unfortunate that it was canceled, added stand-up comic and former Last Comic Standing semifinalist Cyrus McQueen in a statement on NBC. The few opportunities for black comedy writers just got reduced further. I mean, yeah, that sucks. You should have done a better show. You should have done a show that got the audiences more. For his part, Wilmar has rolled out the notion that race played a part in his show's demise. Yeah, because that's stupid. He cited Noah, who was South African, as a counterpoint to that claim. But while Noah's show hasn't made a race a predominant focal point of its humor, Wilmer's did. So because he talked about race, people didn't watch the show because they had issues with the racial conversation. Maybe they just didn't like how he talked about it. Maybe they didn't think he was articulate enough or discussed it in an in-depth way. I mean, what you think when Bill Maher talks about stuff, he doesn't get backlash? Or other people that do these things. They just bring people on and figured out a format to get good ratings. I think Larry Wilmore was very bad. This was addressed early. Jimmy Fallon sucks, but Jimmy Fallon knows how to market a show. I don't think this guy knew how to. The production of the show just didn't work. It didn't know how to market itself and be appealing. I mean, every time I saw content from the show, it just was kind of lackluster. It didn't pop out, and that doesn't mean it was a bad show, but I just don't think it was produced very well. It probably needed some more tinkering before they really put it out there. Easily boasting one of the most diverse casts in late night, the Nightly Show's fan base and often racially charged story selection reflected a segment of the population with former Daily Show host Jon Stewart called Underserved during a cameo appearance on the series finale. Oh, thanks, John. I love when you always come on and, just have to show how awesome of a fucking guy you are. You're always like, yep, sorry, guys. Sorry my show didn't talk to you enough when I was on. I'm just a Jew here. Can't do too much for the African Americans here. You started a conversation that was not on television when you began. Stewart told Wilmore in an emotional farewell, and you worked with a group of people who you invited to the conversations to collaborate with you, to sharpen the conversation. And what you don't realize is you walk out of this room and that conversation doesn't end. Ironically, the original title of the show is The Minority Report. That was a much better title. That would have been very funny. Perhaps would have been more fitting and differentiated it more from its Daily Show lead. Yeah, totally. Wilmer publicly lamented never meshed well with this program. To me, I don't feel like there was enough synergy between our two shows where we could have been, promoting each other the way John and Steven did. Yeah, that was a big mistake early on with Comedy Central even doing the shows that they felt very disconnected. I agree with that, actually. Wilmer's dead on. He says he doesn't watch the Noah version of The Daily Show much. That's hilarious. I think the big obstacle over there is being Jon Stewart's shadow, of course. That's tough for anybody. A young comic like Trevor is trying his best to forge his own voice in there and doing an awful job. It's something John had to do when he took over the show as well. So Jon Stewart was actually funny and had years of experience that showed he could do that sort of thing. The sort of thing takes time, so I give them a lot of credit for doing the best they can. And yet he does fault Comedy Central for not taking him more to the Cultivate Both of programs, which broke ground for presenting an all black. Cultivate Both programs, which broke ground by presenting an all black block of late night talk shows, and apparent tensions with the Daily Show colleagues bubbled up in a little bit on the final episodes of The Nightly Show, with a bit where we mocked them for sending him pastries as a parting gift, while other late night hosts like Sean Oliver and Samantha Bee sent alcohol. I don't even want to comment on that seriously. Like, they give you two shows of black people to host the late night, uh, and you're mad at Comedy Central because they gave you that opportunity. That's pretty fucked up. I get it. Last week tonight has a whole week to decide what to send, so it's not really fair to compare. Wilmore joked. Wade said she is more of a last week tonight full frontal with Samantha Bee when she's in Noah's program. I don't watch the Daily Show remotely as much as I used to. For me, the Nightly Show kind of replaced that. Yeah, I quit watching both pretty early on. She doesn't believe Wilmore was the perfect host or that the show had the buzziest format, but it was still refreshing for her and her black friends because it provided an outlet of the very cultural conversations that we're having in private to get public hearing. I guess. I don't remember them getting in the public more. Nobody seemed to talk about the show. It's probably why its ratings sucked. I mean, if nobody watched it, how did it get into the Zeitz more? He didn't really affect the culture at all. If you're all building this up that he came in and did something impactful, it's like, no, he didn't. His show's getting canceled because people didn't watch it. It's not like Firefly where like 10 years later, 15 years later, people are still talking about that goddamn show. I know plenty of people are watching and didn't even like it that much. He said, it's not the best show, but it's like, what else you got? I don't know, set your standards higher. What's so important about the Nightly Show was the issues about minorities for minorities with a humorous spin. Yeah, except the humorous part should have been first, maybe, instead of focusing on the minority angle first. That might have been where you had a disconnect with your audience because the political outweighed the comedy, and you're on a network called Comedy Central. On his final episode Thursday, Wilmer did make a splash, albeit a controversial one, at this year's White House Correspondents' Dinner, promised that this will not be his last act. As a culture, we've all agreed with the opinion that the one world should be in a certain way, that the world should be seen in a certain way. So, as the Nightly Show, our chief mission was to disagree with that premise. Okay. He said to rapturous applause from the studio audience and to see the world in which the way make not everybody comfortable, and to present it in a cast of people who don't always get to have their voice on that. On the front, I feel that we've been very successful. Now you have it. Your show got canceled, and I couldn't be prouder of what we've accomplished. I'd be prouder if I still had a show. He added before saying that it's since his last episode, and he wants to keep it 100. I'm not done yet. I mean, you're not done, but your show's done. Anyway, yeah, you heard that article? There wasn't actually a lot of racial thing. There was only really one person that commented on it being a racial thing. But they made that the headline, and then the rest of the article is basically just talking about a show get canceled and get some comments. It could have just said Larry Wilmore talks about why a show got canceled, different perspectives. But they used did race play a part, and then they used that as the narrative, and then that's what makes the thing. That's what I don't like about this. This is what I hate about articles. NBC, New York Times, Huffington Post, the list goes on. Salon, Washington Post, they all do this shit. They all have these clickbaity articles. It's to click, and then you read, and there's really nothing racial in there at all. It's clear the show just got canceled because it didn't have ratings, but they could have actually had a discussion and a commentary about that. But when you say stuff like, "Oh, it didn't do well with white audiences," you right there get me out of even listening to what you have to say, because right there I know you're biased and you're already thinking that, so we can't have a conversation. Um, Everything has to be racial with you guys on the left, doesn't it? It always has to be some kind of political thing. It can't just be that shows get canceled because people don't like them. That doesn't even mean it's a bad show. Some of the best shows of all time get canceled. That doesn't mean that audiences were wrong and the show was right. It just didn't connect, man. Sometimes things don't connect with the populace. That doesn't make you wrong or bad. You just don't connect with the populace. That's part of life. Accept it. It's not always a race thing. Like he even brought up Trevor Noah's on, and he's black. I mean, it's silly to act like people have anything against black comedians. I think that's not true at all. I don't think there's a big bias against black comedians. I think black comedians have had strong work now for years. I'd say the most famous comedians of all time, stand-up comedians at least, are probably Richard Pryor, George Carlin. They're right there as a black guy, and then Eddie Murphy's going to come up in the conversation soon, and Paul Moody. I mean, you're gonna have some of those guys in there. No, I'm not saying blacks weren't oppressed in Hollywood and film for years, because they fucking were. But today's world, I do think people are pretty neutral with race when it comes to these sort of things. I just think when you're trying to do a cultural thing that hits a minority population, like you're trying to do black humor, maybe it may not respond with the majority audience, or black people didn't even get into it. I don't know who was this show for. Was it for people that like comedy, or was it for black people, or was it for people that wanted to listen to racial things? I don't know what the premise of the show was entirely. I think Larry's a funny guy. I think he's really cool, and I hope he does something more. I think he would have been a better host than Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah's like one of the least funny comedians I've seen. I went and watched his stand up, and I could not believe how god awful he was. Very confusing how he got that job. Very confusing. I mean, sometimes John Oliver annoys me with his like, "Oh, I'm British and I'm better than you" bullshit. But like, he at least is really funny and makes a lot of funny jokes with his stuff, with his leftist stuff. Trevor Noah's just boring. I mean, he's like the most vanilla black guy ever. He's really that kind of boring. But yeah, I don't think race had anything to do with it. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just my opinion. I just watched the show and I thought it sucked. But I guess leave your comments. Why'd you think it get canceled? Did you think it was because he was black, or do you think it's just because people didn't like the show? That's all I got today. But patriarchy out.